Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to continue our look at painting the ADEPTA Sororitas from Mcfarlane Toys, and in this video we are going to work on the torso. Well, the shoulders and upper torso, I guess, right? To get us started, we're going to use some flat black from Tamiya XF1 for anybody who really needs to know. I'm going to use a larger brush here just to apply this. And with this layering, we are just simply going to move around. And I initially was going to do just that inside collar bit, but then I decided, you know what, let's just do that entirety of the interior there, just right at where it meets up with the wall of the collar, as it were. You can see there it looks a little patchy because it's just one quick little layer. So really quickly we will apply a second layer, getting a nice smooth even coverage, and of course because this is a flat black, it will finish with a nice matte appearance. I'm also going to apply this to the air hoses, whatever these air hoses, I don't know what they are, power cables? I don't know, I don't even know what these details are supposed to represent, but either way, pretty straightforward. Again, with these details, I will apply 2 coats because we're applying this right on top of the silver. And we'll also apply it onto the, I don't know what this is. It's kind of like the corset or like the Under Armour thing. I'm not entirely sure what to call that, but either way, I'm just simply applying a layer onto the interior where this figure meets up with the rest of its torso, simply just to camouflage the inside when this figure is all fully assembled. And you can see we're all ready to go. Next, we're going to jump over to some light gray XF66 from Tamiya. And with this, we are simply going to apply this as a base coat over the areas obviously we want to create as a white kind of vibe. So the fleur-de-lis will get a layer of this, and basically I'm just going to do a quick little layering here. I will have to apply more than one layer. No thinners used when applying this paint, although when I am moving it around, I am being fairly quick. As Tamiya paints, if you've never used this paint before, it does dry quite quickly, and it doesn't really take long, so you're not really waiting around for this stuff to dry, and basically you're better off using a fairly generous amount, moving around fairly quickly around the surface, and of course, don't go back and forth over the same area, like for any length of time, really, because it dries really quickly, and you'll end up pulling at the paint and you'll just end up ruining it and creating this really rough texture on the surface. Gold leaf is next. This is X12 from Tamiya, and with this we're simply just gonna paint in the little gold details. I figured this little trim thing detail here, I don't know what this is, we're going to color that in gold, and of course the icon on her chest will also get a layer of gold as well. I could have also done the skull in gold. In hindsight, I probably could have, but meh, choices were made. We're going to stick with it. So I also considered doing kind of a bone color, but then I decided, we'll do it in a kind of, white fashion, I suppose, but either way. I also had the dilemma of what should I color that eye, and I had posted it on the YouTubes, and a lot of you said paint it white, so here we are, we're painting it white. Democracy in work, or in action I should say. So 2 layers, and what I don't show really in the in between here is that I actually go in and apply carefully around the edges so that it all gets nice and done. We're going to use some raw umber hue from Golden, a drop of Liquitex Flow Aid just to break up its surface tension so it flows like a shade wash. We could just as easily use something like Agrax Earthshade from Citadel to achieve this similar kind of result, although I would use the gloss variety if I was using Agrax Earthshade, because that way it maintains that nice metallic luster and does not create a matte finish when it is done. Here, this is going to only be applied to the gold details of the figure. And so that's relatively straightforward. You can see it is a fairly generous amount. I'm also using my sable brushes here. Most of the time when I am using the Tamiya paints, I'm using synthetic brushes to apply, just simply because when I'm rinsing the brushes, I use some iso alcohol to remove the paint from the bristles. And with synthetics, I'm not too concerned about messing anything up. Shading gray is next, just a couple drops, drop of flow aid, and of course a generous amount of water just to thin the color out. The golden high flow colors are a water-based acrylic, so, just using water to thin it out. You can thin Tamiya paints with water, although it does kind of do some funny things, so I don't really recommend it. Funny being that it gets kind of gummy and it's not really a water soluble paint, so it's you're gonna have funny things happen. You're always better off using the recommended Tamiya colors, the thinners for it, or you can just simply use a little bit of diluted alcohol to thin the color out ever so slightly. Here you can see I'm just simply moving around the gray details with this shade wash, and I'm also going over like the chain and in some other areas of the metal. I'm actually going to use it on the trim of the shoulders where you kind of get closer to the torso, just to create a little bit more separation, and little couplings there for the air hoses, just to create a little bit of distinction between that and the rest of the armor. I also hit the fleur-de-lis on the breasts, simply because it looked a little boring. I was going to paint them white, and then I decided against that, and I was thinking of painting them gold, and then I decided against that. And so I figured, we'll just use a little bit of shade wash, create some separation there so it doesn't feel entirely unpainted, as it were. As I'm doing these sections, though, I did add a little bit more water to the mixture, just so it's not quite as strong. I just wanted it just to gather just a little bit. We're jumping back to the light gray, and we're going to begin our highlighting process on these gray-white elements. I say white because we're eventually going to paint them white. Here you can see I'm just being very deliberate as I apply these highlights. I'm using the same larger brush. It's more like a medium shade brush, really, is what it is. It has a 1/4 inch width to it, for anybody who really needs to know what size of brush I'm using here. And with this, I just quickly maneuver my way around these details, applying a very thin layer. Again, I don't use any mediums when I'm doing this process. I've never really done glazing with these colors. I'm sure you can, but I have not done it myself, so I really just kind of work in this very fast kind of motion. And when working with Tamiya paints, it is a lot of fun in regards to simply just laying your colors down and just simply building up a quick base coat. And because of how well they sit on a surface, and you really don't need that many layers to build up a nice strong even coat, and because of the solvent based paint of what it is, it does dry quite quickly, and it does dry very close to the surface. So even if you lay it fairly heavily, I'm caution here, but I mean, like, a little heavier than normal, it does not leave a lot of brush strokes behind. And so when you work it with it fairly quickly like this, it dries nice, flat, and even, which is really, really nice. The more I've been working with this paint, doing this figure, I'm really kind of getting back into these kind of solvent-based paints. In fact, I might even start playing around more again with enamels and such, testers and Humbrol and all these other kinds of paints. They're just a lot of fun things I used to use when I was doing scale modeling. We're getting beside the point now. Here you can see I'm just simply laying in these highlights, and I'm not too concerned with being totally accurate, as I usually take care of that kind of stuff off camera, just simply so that I can draw this up close to my face and my old man eyes, so that I can see what I'm doing when I'm painting with for the camera like this. My head is like a good 1.5 to 2 feet away from the subject. Gold leaf again, X12. We're simply just going to use our detail brush here. This is a synthetic brush that I'm using, and I'm just going to go around and just pick out the broad forward-facing edges of these details. I'm not going to worry about the edges that go back towards the main body itself and create any kind of highlights there or anything like that. And as I lay these highlights down, I'm just simply catching the outer edges, and in a non-metallic metal fashion, I also highlight kind of downwards, so I'm getting brighter towards the bottom portion of some of the details, just for giggles. I also hit that skull with some of that gold paint, but I'm not too worried about that. Light gray and white, flat white, XF2. We're going to mix these. We're going to do about 3 gray to 1.5, almost 2 white, for that kind of goofy like ratio for everybody out there. And we're going to give this a thorough mixing. We're not going to use any mediums to thin this down. And with this, we're basically going to begin our highlighting process. I was going to do a mask and airbrush this transition in, but I decided, let's just demonstrate using paint and a brush to create our highlights. And in fact, this is a bit more like how we would do it if we were painting this as a miniature. And so again, I'm using this larger brush here because it comes to a nice chiselly point, and it allows me to catch these the ends of the feathers. And my brush stroke, I start at the tip and bring the brush stroke in. And if you're fairly quick about it, you can actually get a little bit of a feathering up the feathers, ironically. And with the brush, again, it makes getting those really sharp edges makes it very easy. So as long as you're fairly quick about it. Now, mind you, because of this little amounts of paint that we're using, I will have to mix a few more batches to achieve my desired end result. So far, I was actually pretty happy with how this is all turning out, again, because I was tempted to bust out the airbrush and lay these transitions out by airbrush. Here on the little skull detail, I'm just catching top of that forehead, and of course there was that little bit of gold that I had mistakenly hit that point, and it covers right over, and I wasn't too worried about that. For the fleur-de-lis, the big petal that in the center, I just do one highlight on its side. And for the side petals, I just catch just the top and that inside curvature. There's it's kind of got two faces or two facets on it, so you can use that as kind of a guide. And it is a bit of a stylized approach to it. I could just simply have, kind of highlighted it in one uniform fashion. Here I'm just putting another layer down just to build up a nice strong light gray. And again, off camera, I will clean up some of these edges here just so that it looks nice. Again, the goal is not to paint this to any kind of high display standards. Again, it's because I do plan on taking actual photographs with these. I'm leaving a lot of the surface bare, and again, this is more like scale modeling, as it were, because again, these are kind of scale models. Really, these are 1/12 scale figures essentially, and broad surfaces with texture and everything like that. XF2 flat white is next, and again, I'm catching the ends of the feathers. Here is where I kind of I'm a little disappointed in what I was doing. Initially, I had laid that highlight down, and I realized that the light gray did not go as far as it should have. And so after I lay this white down, I'm actually going to come back and mix a light gray again with white to create my between tones, because you can see here how the white is quite stark, and then it jumps right to that the original light gray, and I'm just not happy with that, so I will clean that up. And again, the icon itself catches some little edge highlights. Also build a little bit of white highlight in through the center here just to create some light sourcing here, just basically laying these along the edges there. And again, it's it's a stylized approach, I suppose. It's not terribly realistic because the light wouldn't gather at that point on the feathers. Little skull here in the center of the icon. Again, it's just the top of the forehead, the cheekbones, bridge of the nose. The fleur-de-lis that dangles from that chain is, again, it's just a really kind of quick little highlight. Again, on that central petal of the fleur-de-lis, I only highlight one side of it, but I do catch a little edging on the other side. Just again, it creates the impression of almost a non-metallic metal, which is kind of weird because with the non-metallic look, it does almost look like the actual metallics. So it's actually kind of funny, but it's not funny, but I think you guys get my meaning here. Again, we're continuing on with the similar highlight process. Again, it's a stylized approach. It's not realistic or anything like that. It's just, something that looks kind of cool and, distinct. Again, this is the kind of thing we do with miniatures as opposed to scale models. And if I was, being a real stickler for, doing a scale model approach, this would have just been actually white from the start and just a little bit of grays and everything like that in there, or even just left it really, because again, when I do plan on taking photographs with this, that the actual light will play properly on the surface as opposed to deliberately laying in highlights and where light would play on a surface. And that's one of the things about miniature painting, is that with scale models, you don't really see this kind of stuff on scale models. And because, when you're actually looking at it, it is, it's not the same. We're representing light when we're painting miniatures. And so here you can see it's all ready to go. And then this is after I've laid that second layer of a light gray in there just to help blend that white out. And you can see on the feathers it looks a little bit better. I pushed that light gray a little further back towards the center. And of course the fleur-de-lis, I just cleaned up some of its edges. And then of course I slapped the head on just for completeness sake. But that is the torso. Next, I think we'll work on the arms. Well, the cloth on the arms. Actually, we're going to get to the cloth here soon. Big thank you to my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you are considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below and you'll be taken to a website called Patreon where there's various tiers to support at. And a huge thank you to everybody who does. Take care of those brushes and they will take care of you.